Well, the politics of blame game, the hurting economy, as Azimio Umoja leaders have taken to the podium to criticize the government due to high cost of living. They now want the government to restore subsidies and unite the country or resort to mass action. The government won't have none of it. While this happens, Kenyans continue to feel the pinch of high cost of living. Every day, it keeps getting worse. Which way Kenya? And now joining the conversation is Dr. Justus Wafula Otiato, or should I say Otiato Wafula, lecturer at Kenyatta University and political commentator. Thank you so much for making time, Dr. Well, when you look at all these demands and things that politicians are saying, what do you read on it? And probably, what is the current status of the economy or status of Kenya right now?
Thank you very much for bringing me here, and also thank you very much for viewers for watching. The basic fundamental is that the cost of life is definitely at a level where you can describe as unbearable. That's a fact of life. What happens from there is what we should be discussing, but we should not be negotiating whether it's high or not. The fact is that the common man might not be in a position to negotiate himself within this economic time. They are very hard and they're biting. That one we must agree. So the government of the day, we give them the mandate so that they ameliorate these pains. So their job is to make sure that the pains are lesser. We know, in Africa and in those parts of the world where the pains will always be there, but the pains must be less. They must be ameliorated. Now, how they should be ameliorated is the job of the KK Kwanza government.
All right.
How they do it, that's their problem. But they must make sure that the manager on the street feels that there's some patron somewhere up there taking care of him.
Oh, okay. Well, when you look at the 6 demands that Azimio, actually they call it the ultimatum that Azimio has given to the Kenya Kwanza government. And among the key things that actually resulted to this is the high cost of living introduction. They want introduction of subsidies, and they also want reduction of taxes and reforms in IEBC. When you look at the deep root of this problem, it dates back. But what is your view from what you have seen so far? Do you think such demands and ultimatum could be met within short period of time, 14 days to be precise? That is at 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. 14 days or not, but to address these issues, I'd rather we address them one by one.
Right.
So you raise one issue, then we deal with it, then we go to the next one. But whether it's 14 days or not, that's a debate for another day. But you can raise one issue, then we deal with it.
Okay.
There are 6. So number 1.
Why is they want the cost of living to be lowered? That is the main thing that actually they are advocating for. But one thing that I'm really interested about is, the politics of blame game. One side says, you are in the government, you caused this. The other side says, you are now in government, fix it. Until when should we see politicians throwing jabs at each other while the cost of living is high? Kenyans are hurting.
As I sit here, the blame game is not part of my business.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that we have a government in its place. And the job of government is to make sure that we are safe, first of all, physical security and then social security. That I can eat, I can go to the shop and the Kenya shilling is stable, I can go to the shop and do ABCD. So the point of blame game, please remove on the table.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the media. We voted people in. We voted a government. This government promised us a few things. Election is a market where you go and say, me, I'll give you this one will give you this. So take whatever you want. It's a negotiation. And for us, as brilliant as we are not, or Kenyans are rational human beings. And we thought that the KK Kwanza government will give us the best option. And we voted them in. So as for now, the idea of blame game, remove them from the table. We should be asking the Kenya Kwanza government, what option do they have for us to lower the cost of living, the cost of electricity, and so on and so forth, all those the cost of living, as it were.
Right.
Because the cost of electricity is part of the cost of living. So that's what is on the table. And that's what we should be discussing, not blame game. Blame game is not part of us. Whom are they blaming? We voted those guys out. Kenyans made a statement, a bold statement. Hey, you guys, you failed us, we don't want you. Now there's Kenya Kwanza, and you are the guys who are going to make our life. If we were in India, we'll say you will take us to Nairivana. You will take us to that stage where we feel nice and happy. So the people who are supposed to make us feel nice and happy is Kenya Kwanza. And so all these questions should be directed to the Kenya Kwanza, the Minister of Finance, the President, and all those guys of ministers. And they should be asking them, how long will it take for us to start feeling your actions? Of course, it's also unrealistic to imagine that in 1 or 2 days, these things will happen. But they should tell us scientifically, scientifically, how long can we wait for the cost of unga to come down, for the cost of electricity? The problem is that the cost of electricity, instead of coming down, is going up. And of course, you read in today's media, especially social media, where my senior, this gentleman called Dean, was talking about something else from what they promised. That one now will be a little bit unfortunate.
All right.
But they should stick to what they promised and strive to make sure that we get there. It might take time, but let us get there. But when they start disowning what they promised, then that's a tragedy.
All right. Well, when you talk about disowning and the game of shifting, of course, one of the key mandates, and during their campaign, this is what they pledged during their campaign, one of them to reduce the cost of living within 100 days. Now, it's 5 months down the line, the cost of living continued to skyrocket. Electricity up, water up. As a Kenyan, do you feel you are secure, just like you said? The part of Kenya Kwanza government is to make you feel secure in terms of security, food insecurity, all those. Do you feel secured?
No, Kenyans are secure. Let us not sell to Kenyans this idea of we are in trouble, we are just about to sink. No, Kenya is a going concern. We shall be there even in 2030. But the point is this. The Kenya Kwanza Brigade, and they are very serious scholars, very brilliant characters there, who looked at what was going on at that particular time, and they did their calculations, they did their reasoning, their conceptualization, and they thought we can do it in 100 days. But me and you must agree that being there and conceptualizing are two different things. Empiricism, science is about logic or empiricism. You can imagine, you can conceptualize. But when it comes to the ground, approximating your thinking to reality, at times you find it to be very different. And that's where now we are. That they're realizing that their conceptualization, their thinking, their logical approach to things is not what's on the ground. That when they expose their thinking to what we call approximating to reality on the ground, they find, hapa kunaendanga tofauti. Si hivyo, as the Kenyan on the ground will say, akwendangi hivyo. So they are trying to reorganize themselves on the ground. Let's give them time. On that one, I'll tell you, let's give them time. But my argument will be, time, yes, but for how long?
That's a good question. For how long?
Yes.
Azimio la Umoja has given them ultimatum that should be met within 14 days. Well, you have read about the 6 demands, and of course, the time frame is something very interesting to look at. Do you think 14 days is enough?
Those six demands are the ones I want to go one by one. What is the first demand?
Let's talk about the cost of living. They want it to be lowered. That is their first demand.
Let me tell you, and that's why I have a problem with the Azimio la Umoja. You are taking the government on. Raila Odinga is an enigma. The whole world has accepted. This kind of a man you cannot understand. And you must accept, me and you, and anybody else must accept, that we have seen this guy for the last 50 years, if not 40, that he can change himself in situations. But the most constant is that Raila survives best in a crisis. So when he creates a crisis, you better withdraw that crisis from him, pull the carpet under his feet. Raila will be left alone. But when you want to play with him in the in a crisis, when you want to join him in the crisis, you might easily fail. It's akin to the fable, the famous fable that a pig, don't play with a pig in the mud, because the one who will live there more dirtier than the pig. Because the pig is used to, from that kind. Raila is used in crisis.
All right.
And I'm told Kibaki and Uhuru, those who think they know more than I do, Kibaki and Uhuru believed in that. And so they withdrew. They made sure that Raila is comfortable, there's no crisis. And you see, when Raila is not in a crisis, he's not himself. So he doesn't even know what to do. And you can easily crush him. You can easily do away with him. And that's, if you look at the last general elections, Raila being a statesman and being in the so-called, on the right side, as it was, you know, we have the left and the right. And the right usually don't demand so much. It's like things are okay, they are the status quo, we are okay, we are doing well. It was very difficult for me to say that. Raila is at his best when he's saying things are wrong, where he is right now. Things are wrong. Guys, rise up. We must carry up placards. We must say no. That's where Raila thrives best. And I'll be one of these fellas who will advise that please don't take Raila there.
All right.
He will thrive.
But is it true that the economy is hurting? Is it true the high cost of living is high?
That's a fact. And the economy is not just hurting in Kenya. The economy is hurting across the third world.
All right.
And I dare say here that we are now experiencing the third phase of structural adjustment programs.
All right.
You and me know. If you don't know, let me tell you that the World Bank is forcing our governments in this part of the world to withdraw taxes from the telcos. Google is not going to pay tax so soon. But that tax is me and you is going to pay. And when me and you are going to pay those taxes and withdrawing taxes from things like food and whatever, growing food and like that, we are going to suffer more. So it's something more than this government. But I might go ahead and tell you this as a student of politics that there's no government which has been overthrown over such issues. Because what do? Bring in subsidies. And who pays for the subsidies? We are the ones who will pay for the subsidies in the next 10 years. Borrow more money. Who will pay for that money? We are the ones who will pay for that money in the next 10 or 15 or 50 years. So this government, and that has been the problem with Africa. If you look at the great Africa, Nyerere included, Sankara, my senior comrade Robert Gabriel Mugabe, they have suffered because of this, because they have been pushed to the wall. When they didn't want to borrow, they had to borrow. But when you are borrowing more than what you need, at their conditionalities, like now they are telling us we must excuse the telecos from taxes. I mean, who will pay? It's me and you. So at times we have to ask ourselves, even if you are in the opposition, are we being nationalistic? Are we being patriotic? But that's for another day.
All right. In your own opinion, how do you propose we should go about this? Because as a country, we need a dialogue, we need a conversation, yes, between leaders. But how do you move from this crisis?
I agree with you
to forging a better future?
We need a dialogue. Because this is an African problem, this is a Kenyan problem, we must solve it as Kenyans. But we might not need ultimatums.
All right.
Because ultimatums will take us to the cliff, a cliffhanger. Just imagine, Raila Odinga is Raila Odinga. You might wish him away or not, but it's Raila Odinga. And people are hurting out there. And he's promising them Nairivana, he's promising them a good life. So they might come to that cliffhanger. And yet the government doesn't have money, for example, for subsidies and that kind of stuff. What will happen to Kenya? These are things we need to ask ourselves. Are we going to the cliffhanger to jump ourselves to the other side? Or, we need to talk to ourselves. And what I'm trying to agree with you is that we need a dialogue as Kenyans, not as Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, but as Kenyans. These are our problems. We have to solve it. And beyond that, as Africans, if the World Bank and those who connive against us every evening and morning have decided that now this is the time for the third wave of structural adjustment programs that messed us up, especially my generations, we must ask ourselves, is this the time to tell them, please, hey, hold on a bit?
Well, the big question is how can we do it and who will do it?
Me and you. There's no simple question there. It's me and you must suffer. You know, Africans have this business of thing that I used to listen to reggae many years ago, and I still listen to reggae. And they used to have a song, I don't know who sang it, that obviously you are mistaken. There's a song, a very famous song, because Africans believe the song used to go like, obviously you are mistaken. The last train is leaving you behind. They don't bother leaving you behind. The last train is leaving. They don't bother leaving you behind. But you are mistaken that they bother to leave you behind. By the way, Europeans have no bother leaving you behind. They will leave you behind and they won't even think about it twice. So it's our problem to think about this business. That, oh, these guys are moving and they're leaving us behind. What do? We must, you know, there's a book called, the question, the Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda means the base. The Americans took these characters to Afghanistan to fight the Russians in the 70s. But when they defeated the Russians, they were left there. And the book, which is written by Mahmoud Mamdani, is that they were left under a tree, the base. Al-Qaeda simply means the base. They were left under a tree somewhere there or under a rock. So they were like, oh, we have been left. So what do? So we have been left under some rock or under something. We must think way out. And of course, Osama bin Laden came out of it. Whether it's successful or not, that's another discussion for another day. But the point is this: we have been left under a rock. So what do? Look at Zimbabwe. Look at Tanzania. Look at Kenya. For us, we have never been left under a tree, by the way. Somehow, the West have always thought that we are so important, we cannot be left. So we have always been taken care of. But if you look at Tanzania, if you look at Zimbabwe, if you look at Burkina Faso, these fellas have really been messed up. But somehow, they have woken up, they have realized, oh, we have been left. So what do? They looked aside and they, okay, let us negotiate. We negotiate within ourselves. This gentleman, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, he's a great statesman. This gentleman, you call the president, His Excellency the President Ruto, he's a great statesman. And they're all very reasonable characters. They should sit together or in their rooms, their handlers must know that, okay, this West, what do they want from us? And what do we want from ourselves? Because at times we blame the West when the problem is here. The other day they were cleaning Nairobi River. Do you want America to come and clean Nairobi River for you? So some of the problems are just between me and you. Sit down, renegotiate.
All right.
We shall move forward. Okay.
Well, even as we wind this particular discussion, of course, one of the key things for the government, of course, is to lower the cost of living. That one will still hold them accountable for that because it was within 100 days, and now it is past 100 days. They say give us time, of course. If there is one thing that Kenyans lack is patience.
If I have to cut you short, even if they want to give, I am one man who believes they were not there, so when they reached there, they found things are different. But please, give us a timeline. Is it 6 months? Is it 1 year? But you cannot just keep on hoping that somehow, David Livingstone came here in 1075 AD, he was in Congo, and he was telling Africans to get saved, Jesus Christ is coming tomorrow. He never told them tomorrow's when, because even today is still tomorrow. We want a finite timeline. Are they telling 6 months, 1 year? That's right. Please, we should hold them responsible for that.
All right.
Raila should be reminded to hold them responsible for that.
Among the ultimatum, one of them was high cost of living. There is the reforms in the IEBC, because when we have to look at the deep root of this, the blame game, the squabbling between the Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, they date back to all these ultimatums that have been narrowed down to 6. And there is reforms in the IEBC. They want the current recruitment of IEBC officials to be stopped, commissioners, I should say, to be stopped, and they want reforms and consultative process. Is it attainable?
It is. Everything is possible, my dear brother. Let us not. Reforms alone are not enough. Any day, anywhere. America is an example of or so in quotes, of a very successful democratic experiment, but it is not based on the constitution. It's based on non-constitutional agreements. You know, Americans have so many of what we call norms, political norms, things that you have just agreed as gentlemen. Yes. Do you know, even it's not true until I think which year, where they say that you cannot rule 3 times. But you could continue. But it's just a gentleman's agreement.
Right.
Yes, it's not. So let us not peg these things on constitutionalism with things that are written. Yes, they are good and they are great. But we must also try to, as I'm a sociologist, try to normalize, that's what we call hardware. What about the software? Our thinking as individuals. If you are the chairman of IEBC, the law says this and this and this. But what do you think is the right thing under that time?
All right.
So that has been our problem.
All right.
The software.
All right. Now, as we come to the tail end, I want you to merge 2 things. First of all, it's about the subsidies that the Kenya Kwanza government, of course, they do away with that. And the next thing, I want you to give me the hit and misses of Kenya Kwanza, of course, even as we narrow down. How do you look into this, the subsidies thing that Kenya, that Azimio, they want them to be reintroduced? At least for them, they believe it will usher in some sort of relief to Kenyans who are suffering right now as far as food security is concerned in the country.
Thank you very much. It's unfortunate, but if you ask me, Oteto Wafula seated here, I don't believe in subsidies.
All right.
Yeah. They don't help anybody. They only help a few capitalists up there. I don't believe in subsidies. The country, the state has many ways of especially subsidies of food. You'd rather have subsidies in the implements, which will take a long time, like to subsidize bolea, subsidize tractor, subsidize all kind of stuff. Yes, but to subsidize the cost of maize, that's just subsidizing a few individuals in government.
All right.
Yes.
But if you were to, so far, 5 months into office, if you were to rate the Kenya Kwanza government, of course, that is a question that I ask you about the hit and misses. In a score of 1 to 10, what's your rating?
I'll give them 7. They're trying.
7 is a huge number.
Yes.
Why?
It was almost an A. They're trying. I mean, I told you, we are imagining that this is a Kenyan problem.
All right.
Go to Tanzania. I was watching on Twitter the other day. How do you call them? Ufugaji. A person was dying when he was waiting. So the drought. Of course, we have in Kenya. We have so many other things adding up, corruption and all of stuff. But the point is that I told you at the beginning, this is the 3rd wave of structural adjustment program.
All right.
We might talk about it about next year, where telecos, World Bank is trying to force Kenya government not to tax telecos, the Google and the group, but tax you and me. You know the cost of electricity now. That is what is coming from the telecos, and you can imagine what Google makes here. But because they are the World Bank, and some of us we earn from the World Bank, even me and you, we will not touch them. We want to hit our government, but leave those big boys. The moment Africans realize that our problems are here, so we must hit those boys first, then come back. But I'm not saying you cannot excuse the government from that, because you also know there's a lot of corruption. If you look at the electricity tariffs, there's a lot of corruption, and so there's a lot of mismanagement, and so on and so forth. So if you can solve corruption and mismanagement, if mismanagement is not corruption, we might be somewhere, but still we shall be this way. Let us not cheat each other.
Okay. Otiato Wafula.
But what I wanted to tell you is this. When I was a youngster, in first year,
okay,
if you go to the University of Nairobi, there's some underground. At the library, there's an underground there. And I've always told my students, Ali Mazrui came to University of Nairobi in 1991, in 1971, to give a public lecture, which Professor Chola, my mentor, used to talk about so much. And in that lecture, public lecture, Mazrui used to talk about Milton Apollo Obote, who was having a lot of problems at that time. in Uganda. But he was describing the way I want to describe Raila Odinga in one way or the other. That Milton Apollo Bote, the man, there's a difference between Milton Apollo Bote, the man, the politician, and the statesman.
All right.
Because Raila last year was a statesman. He could tolerate a lot of Uhuru Kenyatta's problem if he understands the remedies of the international environment. So, Milton Apollo Bote, the man, the politician, was the far left of Milton Apollo Bote, the man. But Milton Apollo Bote, the statesman, if you give him power, is the far right of Milton Apollo Bote, the man. And must really go ahead to say, nevertheless, this man is lacking in the charisma of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, bereft of the intellectual endowment of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. Nevertheless, he is a consummate politician.
All right.
You can say that to Raila Odinga. You can say all this thing about Raila Odinga, but this man is a consummate politician.
Okay.
And if you are assuming, you are in trouble.
All right. Thank you so much, Otiato Wafula, for making time. It's always a pleasure to have you. All right. Well, we take another yet short break. When we come back, up next is Sport News.